It's been daylight for almost near an hour now, even though the sun hasn't come up over the trees. I've been waiting for it to come up above the tree line so I could give y'all another beautiful view of the sunrise here over my Central Virginia homestead. But I came up early. You know, it's still daylight, light enough to see at least outside for a good 40 minutes about every morning before that sun breaks up over the tree line. I came up here early to do some work in the woods behind me here. But I didn't go in the woods, and I'm going to tell you why. It has to do with this little drone right here. And something that happened here just a few nights ago that I didn't connect to occurrence that happened the next night until I started reading a lot of the comments you guys have been leaving here in the videos. A couple of videos where we mentioned Bigfoot. A couple of those stories have been pure, complete fiction as part of our ghost story series here for the month of October we're doing for the channel. And I mentioned that I've been kind of creeping myself out with these stories, been hearing things back here in the woods, and you know, the more reasonable minds have kind of come to agree that it's probably that 300-pound bear that we have lurking around here. But there are other minds who think these noises might be coming from other things. So I'm just going to tell you a little story about this drone here. Some comments I've read here in the comment section on these videos, and I guess while I've been sitting here in this chair, it doesn't help that the fog has been just floating about 5 feet high above the fields down there, looking super creepy, like a scene out of that movie The Horseman with Johnny Depp, you know, where it's kind of a knockoff of the Headless Horseman. The only main difference really is that Ichabod Crane is a constable or a man of the law in the movie version as opposed to a school teacher in the original. But Saturday night, and I shared this with you in a morning ramble yesterday, which didn't get uploaded to almost nighttime because of our internet connection problems, but our son spent the night away from us for the first time ever, his first sleepover, and that was a rough night. But what made it even rougher was the fact that we had something out here knocking around on the trash can, getting into the trash can, scattering trash all over the yard. And I had just recently told that Bigfoot story about the Capri, as it's pronounced, Capri we would say in American English, over there in the Philippines. The night Dearly and I had on the island of Samal, which would influence my novel Isle of Capri. So I've got all these thoughts about Bigfoot going on in my mind. Something's outside in the dark, knocking over the trash can, making all this noise. I'd stepped out on the porch a few minutes before this to relieve myself and smelled that strong musk odor associated with black bears, but which a lot of folks have said in the comments section is also associated with Sasquatch. So my mind's running crazy. It's going, you know, 1,000 miles an hour with what could be, creeping myself out. Your all's comments are creeping me out. So then this morning, I get online and I read a comment on either that video or the video about the Isle of Capri left from somebody, well, several comments, okay? Number one, a recent comment, a gentleman wanted to hear more stories from PJ, greatest storyteller I ever knew. I'm going to tell you two brief stories here in just a second to kind of confirm some things that are being stated in these comments. Number two, several comments. I had no clue how many Bigfoot sightings there have been in Virginia. I mentioned Graves Mountain Lodge yesterday in a morning ramble, and it's so ironic. It's such a small world. I believe her name is Renee. A subscriber commented that she had some family members that were up there just yesterday at the Fall Apple Festival, which I need to make sure to take my family to at some point before that's over. That's always a good time. But she mentioned that she knows of Bigfoot sightings in Culpeper, Virginia, which is just north of us, Spotsylvania County, Bedford, which is down south. I've been there to the World War II Memorial. You guys got to check that out if you're ever in that part of the country. Bedford, the small town of Bedford, lost more men per capita on D-Day than any other community in the United States. That's why they built the the D-Day Memorial is what's there. Not the World War II Memorial, the D-Day Memorial. Something like 32 or 33 young men out of their graduating class. You probably read the book The Bedford Boys. I did years ago. Great book. It's about that community. But there's allegedly been Bigfoot sightings there. People have been saying, or they've been asking if I'm close to the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's right behind me in these woods here. We go up there several times a year, usually spring and usually fall. We're going to be going up there soon. We'll make a video, of course, I'm sure. We like to go up there and look at the leaves. And there are places on this Blue Ridge Parkway where you can pull over at the overlooks and see our community. Our friends Phil and Debbie right up the road. Shout out to Phil and Debbie, some of my former co-workers there at the post office. They're probably going to drive by here any minute and horn bomb this video. You can see their front yard. You can see the Leland cypresses in their neighbor's yard across from their yard from one spot up here. So that's how close we are to the Blue Ridge Parkway. And people have said in the comments, are you close to the BRP? Because there's a ton of Bigfoot sightings up there. So I'm thinking in my mind, well, Blue Ridge Parkway, that's a tourist trap. You got a lot of folks who live in cities come here. They take that drive in the fall to see the leaves. They've probably never seen a bear before in their life, and maybe they catch the back end of a bear going across the road, and their imaginations run wild with them, and so they think Bigfoot's got to be a Bigfoot. Or maybe they see a bear up there. There's this one place up there, I forget the name of it, but it's got apple trees, peach trees. Maybe they've seen a big black bear from a distance on its hindquarters, standing up, reaching up, grabbing apples, and they think Bigfoot. I don't know. My reasonable mind, my rationale mind is trying to come up with reasons why not to believe things that are not supposed to be believable. But the mind that has my experiences, that has lived overseas, Middle East, Southeast Asia, had experiences in Appalachia, is telling me, Kevin, you've seen things and you've experienced things you can't explain, so don't rule anything out. The sun's finally coming up. I'm not finished, but I'm going to show you, and you get a good view of this creepy fog that's kept me out of the woods. Isn't this, I don't know if you can see it as well as I can with the depth perception of this camera, but it's starting to crack through the fog down there, and you can see here the fog just hovering above the field. This fog has been moving up here. So I came up here, and I just, with all this stuff going on, when I tell you about this drone and about my friend PJ, God rest his soul, he's been gone for a few years, I'm going to tell you why I didn't go into the woods. You see this? This is a big, long cedar pole. If you've been following, you know that we lost a huge limb off of our giving tree, a giant red oak back here, and I've been in here cutting up the limb for firewood, and I was splitting some yesterday. You can see that red oak's pretty hard to split with an axe. People asked how I split my wood. I split with that axe. See that axe sitting there, that chopping block? That's how I do it. It's good exercise, good workout. I know I'm not going to be able to do it forever, and when the time comes I'll buy a splitter or whatever, but for now, while I can, I like to use that axe. And so anyway, that big oak limb knocked down a bunch of dead cedars. There's a bunch of other dead cedars right along that wood line, and that cedar on the end is as wide as these four fingers put together. So what I'm going to do is kind of pull some of those out and kind of reclaim these and saw them down and use them to build a pole barn for some goats we've been wanting to get for quite some time. But the last goat house I tried to build ended up being a chicken coop. But I'm going to try to do a better job here, and I'm going to use cedar poles. Cedar is very resistant to insects, as you know, a lot of you know, and I just like the rustic appearance of pole barns. And building this will allow me to better my homesteading skills, because I'm not the best homesteader on YouTube. So that'll just give me a little more practice, another skill, and they look good. Unless it ends up being a rabbit cage, because I mess it up too. So anyway, I come up here to go out in those woods. Light enough to see, sun wasn't up yet. And a couple things. Okay, my cat, Cleopatra, she sits on a wood pile down there by the edge of the field and stares at the house. No, she wakes me up I wake up between 4 and 5 anyway. Sometimes she wakes me up, sometimes I'm awake before her, but when she hears me moving around, she comes over, sits on my lap, and then she wants me to let her out. So I let her out. Then every morning when I come outside, like clockwork, she's sitting on that pile of wood, staring at the house, waiting for me to come out so she can start following me around. Well, the last few mornings, she's been sitting on that wood pile, but she's been facing away from the house, and she's been facing up here at our campground, up here into these woods, where I've been hearing stuff creeping me out in the evenings when I've been coming up here telling these ghost stories that I hope to do again tonight if I don't creep myself out enough, or if you guys don't creep me out too much in the comments, you're going to leave by the time you hear the story of this drone and PJ's stories. So the last few nights, or the last few mornings, she's been staring up this way. And when I come outside, I know she hears me, but she doesn't even turn around. It's like she doesn't care. There's something up in these woods that got her attention. So Friday, Daryl and I made half of a video that never got published, and it's because of this drone. This is our son's drone. Our friend Hetty, thanks Hetty, got Daniel this drone because she got her grandson Colton one, and she wanted to get Daniel one too. So it needed to be charged before we could fly it. Daniel was in school. We were charging the drone. Dearly was cooking. I was outside raking up all that hay. And I just got the idea, this is terrible, to test my son's drone before him because I like toys. So I said, come on, Dearly, let's test this drone. Let's make a video. We'll call this video, Are We Bad Parents for Playing with Our Kids' Toys Before He Does? So we get out there in the field, and she's got the camera, and I'm flying the drone. I take it straight up, and then it starts going. I can't control it. I didn't know how to do it. So we have an extremely tall white pine, and I'll just show you right here. This right there behind the house, that's a big, there's actually two of them. Ginormous white pines, tall as can be. This flown drives right into that white pine, the top of it, and that's the last we see of it. So that's why you didn't see the video, because the answer to the question was, yes, we are terrible parents. Not for playing with our kids' toys before him, but I guess for losing them in the tree. So it's small. We looked and looked and looked for this drone underneath that tree for 20 minutes because I felt so bad for losing my kid's toy before I even played with it. We couldn't find it. Forgot all about it. I forgot about this. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you why I remembered this. Saturday morning, I come out on the back porch, and this drone is laying right behind the back door. I open the door, and this is 2 steps out on the porch. Well, you might be saying, well, it just fell from the tree and landed on the porch. No, that's not possible because we have an awning over our porch, and the awning stretches out a good 12 feet in all directions from where the door is. This could not have fallen onto the porch. This had to have been placed on the porch, and this was 2 steps outside the back door on the back porch. So I go in, well, I wait till she wakes up. Dearly wakes up. I didn't touch this. I didn't move it. And so I go in, she's drinking her coffee, and I say, honey, did you find that drone we were looking for? And she said, no, don't say anything to Daniel. He'll probably forget he even had it. And I said, well, okay, but that's not why I'm asking. Are you sure you didn't find that drone? She said, no, I didn't find that drone. Why? And I said, come here and look at this. I walked her to the back door, opened the door, and pointed at it. I said, look. And she said, halaka, which is in Filipino says, oh my G word. She was shocked. That's what she says when she's surprised. And she said, you put that there, didn't you? You put that there to play a trick on me. I said, honey, I did not put that there. I said, how did that get there? And so she just instantly, without thinking, says, well, it must have been Cleopatra, our cat. That's our cat's name if you haven't been following our channel, Cleopatra. So I said, okay, so you think Cleopatra climbed to the top of that pine tree, got this drone, and put it on our back porch? And she said, no, the wind picked up, it knocked the tree down, the drone fell. Cleopatra got the drone because she saw us looking for the drone and she knew we wanted it, and so she brought it to the back porch. Well, that's a wonderful story, and wouldn't it be great if that were true? But that's about as believable as, some people would say that's about as believable as the topic we're discussing right now anyway, right? I don't think it's any more or any less believable than any alternative explanation as to how this drone ended up 2 steps outside my back door. So this happened in the wee hours of Friday night going into Saturday morning. Saturday, Daniel had the sleepover, and then Saturday night, we had the experience with whatever got into our trash can and smelled like musk that kept us up while we were up already anyway because our son was away from us. So somebody left a comment on that video about Sasquatch, about looking for gifts. They said they live in the Pacific Northwest, and that it's not uncommon for Sasquatch to try to make peace offerings or to show signs of, you know, he or she is not here to harm you. A lot of times they'll share their kills with hunters, or if they take part of a hunter's kill that they find in the woods, they'll bring something back. And that's when I immediately thought about, oh my gosh, this drone. Guys, I'm just putting this out there for you. I'm not saying I believe one way or another, but the comments you guys have been leaving, I thought when I started talking about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, or even telling some of these ghost stories for the Halloween season, that we'd just lose subscribers and all this stuff, because we're always talking about objectivism, reasoning, feelings aren't facts. And I don't feel like I want Bigfoot to be real. What I'm saying is, I don't know. And I've learned to assume nothing and question everything. Just because I don't have evidence that something may exist doesn't mean it doesn't, at least in my mind. And I think that's using reason. Now, if I wanted to say, oh, I know he's real because when I think about him, I get all warm and fuzzy. No, that's not reasonable. That goes against the concept of objectivism. But to say, well, there's never been any proof that I've seen, so it can't be real. Well, I've never seen gravity either. So that also flies in the face of objectivism. What's the middle ground? Guys, that's the story with the drone. Now, PJ's 2 stories. I said I'd mention that, and this is quick. I remember just talking to him, and he wasn't even telling stories. This was years ago. There were 2 different occasions in which he told me he saw something he couldn't explain. Once, I believe it might have been a cougar, and that's what he thought. He just mentioned coming down this old dirt road off the top of the mountain back where he lived just before dark. It was right at dusk, and seeing something jump into the road from out of the woods on one side and jumping back out of the road into the woods on the other side, just with one fell leap. Cleared the road, touched down the middle, went to the other side. He said it was a little bit smaller than a deer, bigger than a dog. And he'd lived there for years, I mean generations, and he'd seen deer come out of the woods, jump across the road. It always took a good-sized deer, a mature-sized giant buck, 2 leaps, those 3 leaps to cross that road. Whatever he saw did it in 1 leap. He never claimed that it was mountain. He said in his mind he believed the only reasonable explanation would have been a mountain lion, but mountain lions are not being seen. The last recorded sighting of a mountain lion or killing of a mountain lion was at an old prison camp at a place called the Cranberry Glades in Pocahontas County, across the Virginia border, during the Civil War. So it'd been more than 100 years, but doesn't mean they weren't there. And then secondly, he said that he was hunting one time and he was in his tree stand at the edge of a field, or an old grown-up field where an old homestead had used to be maybe a century before, and he saw something come walking out of the woods about the size of a dog, a little bit bigger, wasn't a dog, wasn't a wolf, wasn't a coyote, had pointy ears, looked kind of mangy, and had just walked across the field. He saw it once, never saw it again, had no clue what it was. And that story stuck with me because all of his stories stuck with me. He's the greatest storyteller I ever knew. He told me this story probably in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And it would be about another decade or so, but eventually reportings of chupacabra sightings started coming out. And so that's just kind of what I've always kept in my head as a possibility. So anyway, the sun is now up, and I'm going to go back here in the woods and pull out some of these cedar poles and start working on my cedar barn. I will be vigilant while I'm in those woods. I am going to pick up a stick occasionally and bang on the side of a tree, which somebody suggested in the comments, and see if I hear any banging come back. But hopefully, since it's still the month of October and we're creeping ever closer to Halloween, hopefully I will find the courage and the gall to come up here just before dark tonight and tell you another ghost story. This wasn't meant to be one. I had to tell you about this drone and with everything that's going on after reading some of those comments in the comment section. So the sun's nice and high over the homestead now. Hopefully we don't have any internet connection problems today and I can get this morning ramble uploaded to you while it's still morning. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, and make sure to check back with us for more later here at Homesteading Off the Grid.